I don't want to even dare to try to introduce all of the things that you do because you are a / hyphenate individual. So if you'd like to introduce you and what you do, that would be great.
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Victoria Negri. I'm a filmmaker, I like to say, is the overall thing, but I do many things: writer, director, producer, actress. How I got to where I am. So I started off acting mostly. I went to Tisch for acting, and I did a lot of creative writing while I was there, thank God, because that gave me a voice that I started to develop and didn't really realize where I wanted to get into later on. So yeah, I was acting in a lot of things in college, a lot of productions. I was really drawn to wanting to connect with other filmmakers because I think I later on realized maybe I should have just been a film major because my passion is really in movies. I grew up just going to the movie theater with my family every single weekend and seeing everything. So yeah, I graduated and I got quickly frustrated in acting in a lot of things that I didn't think were great stories, and feeling really limited in the characters I was portraying, seeing things that I didn't think were written that well, and I would just shoot myself in the foot in auditions nonstop because I'd read the script and be like, I don't even really want to do this. This is boring to me and not interesting. So I would give nonstop bad auditions because I didn't actually want to be doing what I was doing. So I just started to say to all of the filmmakers that I had been in their things and respected their work, like, hey, what are you doing? Can I just show up? Can I crew for you? Can I do anything? So I PA'd, I did set photography, I was like dressing sets, moving candles, like anything people would let me do. I just started doing that, but I was always writing. Like I've kept a journal since I was in elementary school. I have like stacks of handwritten journals. I'm always writing and carrying around a notebook. So that's always been a constant throughout my whole life, and it's full of like poetry and song lyrics that I'll never actually make into music, and little drawings and doodles and sketches, and it's just like my mind working stuff out and circling ideas, and like everything is in there, and I hope no one ever looks at them or finds them. They're like hidden. They can never be seen by anyone that knows me or doesn't know me. So I was doing that for a whole bunch of years, and then something really huge happened in my life that changed my path forever and like shook me and made me realize, like, what am I waiting for? I need to really just start telling stories and have more control over it. And own it, and own the fact that, like, hey, I want to be a writer-director. I have to stop, hiding from that and being afraid to tell people I'm a filmmaker. So in 2011, my father had a massive stroke when I was 24. And he was much older, he was 87. And for that whole year, I took care of him. I was back and forth home to Connecticut to visit my family. And I started to just write everything that was happening because I felt so alone in what I was going through of taking care of my dad, because I couldn't really relate to anyone my age who was 24 taking care of a father who was in a wheelchair. He couldn't speak for a whole year, no words, feeding tube. It was something that I just felt really alone in. And over the course of many months, it turned into a screenplay. And then I was like, I want to act in this. I want to write myself this role. And it kind of became like, I didn't even really think about what I was doing. I just knew I had to do it, and I wanted to do it. And I reached out to people that I trusted, and I said, I'm thinking about doing this. Do you think, like, would you read the screenplay? And just like asking for tons of advice, asking people to get coffee, directors I respected. And then I started to interview directors, and I realized, like, no one understands this story like I do. I'm going through this. If I'm acting in it and someone gives me direction that hasn't experienced it, I'm going to check out and it's not going to be as good. And also, no one's going to work as hard on this film as I am. And I remember I got coffee with a filmmaker who was like 30 or 40 years older than me, had like tons of experience, and he said, do not act and direct. Don't do it. And I went home and I was like, I'm not the first person to be doing this. Why is he telling me not to? Just because it's a lot of work? Like, I think I'd be more angry at myself after the fact for not trying. And then my father passed away in November of 2012. And it was like right after that I was like, what am I afraid of anymore? I'm just gonna do this. What am I wasting time with? I don't want to end up, decades down the road, not, being brave, like you said, and taking a huge risk. So that film ended up, it's my first feature film. I had never directed a film before. That was the first time I directed, and I showed up the first day on set and had this like panic attack because the man who played my father in the film, his name's Robert Vaughn, he was Oscar nominated and Emmy winner, and I was like, oh no, I've never directed before. He's gonna walk off the set. And for me, it's just been like, I keep, we shot the film in 2014, it came out in 2017. I've put so much work into it, like it's so hard. And I'm gonna be shooting my next feature film this spring, which I can talk about too. But I think it's like, what I've learned from all of this is just keep putting yourself in uncomfortable positions and you'll figure it out if you really care about it.
Yes, and I want to jump in there because I think that's the most valuable point that you can learn, which is we all have things we want to do, and most of us are being held back by an industry that is telling us like you need to be perfect before you go out, which first of all is impossible because there is no perfect with art. There is no great with art because it is such a subjective thing. If you looked at the movies I watched the most, they're not necessarily movies that are great, well-made movies. They're movies that speak to my soul. And so it is really important that if you want to be making film, if you want to be making theater, if you want to be making music, the quicker you can get something together that you know has heart. It doesn't need to be perfect, but you like, I've shown this to my mentors, my group, my class. I know it's at least on this level. And just know that like the quicker you throw yourself into it and just do it, the quicker you get on that path, because it is a long path. And the sooner you get on that path, even if it's like with the roughest, most rockiest piece that you can get on there, the more effective it's gonna be. If I waited until I felt like a lecture for my writers was perfect for them, like I don't think I would ever get a lecture out. But I'm like, I read something about neuroscience, I think about how to connect it, that'll help my writers, and I get in front of them and I'm like, I figure it out in the room with my writers how to affect them. And the most important thing I think is that we are right now in this convenience culture that is taking over. And I didn't see this 10 years ago compared to what I see now, that I get way more people saying, oh, but wouldn't it be easier if? And this most important thing that you can start practicing today that will help you no matter what creative field you are in is to start to get comfortable being in uncomfortable situations, because that is the only way that you will grow, that is the only way that you will develop. If you are not uncomfortable, you are not learning. You cannot be completely comfortable and learning at the same time. And everything is about learning. Like you never finish being a filmmaker, you never finish being a storyteller. So the more you can seek out the places that are uncomfortable and then go to them and become comfortable within that space and grow from there, you are gonna develop much, much faster. But that's what I thought was so brilliant about your film, was like, I could tell just by watching it, I was like, I was just like, wow, like this was someone who, their bravery outweighed their experience. And that is such a valuable thing, because otherwise, you wouldn't have jumped in and gotten, it's amazing to get anything shot, right?
Making a film is a miracle.
Huge.
It's a miracle.
It is, and it requires so many people and so many moving parts.
Yeah.
The fact that you were able, and I think that this is why sometimes the greatest art comes from moments in our lives where it just shakes us to our core, like the loss of someone or something that reminds us of what's actually important to us. That, it is not the comfort of seamless that is important to you. It is the fact that you are living a life that is worthy of like what your soul is capable of doing. And that's why I think so much of great art does come out of trauma or pain. And it doesn't mean we should put ourselves into that pain or trauma, but when that eventual pain or trauma comes our way, that is an opportunity, that is a bus to jump on do not just drown yourself in TV and wine and cigarettes, and not that I'm looking in a mirror as I'm saying this at all. But yeah, so I just want to commend you on that, because I think the entire film, and if you haven't seen the film already, you can go on Amazon. Gold Star on Amazon, you can go and watch it. I would love to ask you, so most of us, we're struggling in between drafts. I'd be very interested to know, from first draft to final draft, like how much transformation happened from those early initial scribblings and journalings to the final product.
It's so different. I remember at one point I got really frustrated with the film, and I just said, I'm starting from scratch. And I remember highlighting the whole, selecting all, and just deleting it, and trusting that the story was in my head. And then I wrote the whole, I took a day and just did a new vomit draft. Mm-hmm. And that was terrifying. But
you can also just save it, put it in another folder, open a plain draft, and start.
I definitely did. Yeah. But this was the newest version of it. I deleted, and I think it's not being too precious about your work. But yeah, it's so different, and especially for screenwriting, it'll even be changing while you're shooting. It'll be changing the script. I know everyone works differently. I'm much less precious about dialogue, and I like to work with actors a lot, and finding once the film is cast, finding the dialogue with the actors and running lines and seeing what made more sense. Mm-hmm. So for me, the script is never done. But the last shooting draft, right before we were shooting, it kept changing. But I made some huge changes, and for me, from a really personal perspective, because I started writing it before my father passed away, but I was living in that difficult experience of processing, knowing he was going to pass away. It changed a lot after he died, and realizing what that was for me.
Yeah.
So
I just think it's so important, because a lot of times I'll talk to, when I'm working with emerging writers, they'll get this is my concept, this is my idea, this is my story, and then they'll stay so stuck in what they think their story is that they rob themselves of what the story could be. And so I love having people come in and be like, oh no, first draft to final draft. I think the first draft is just the candy that the witch puts out for you, leading you into the deep, dark woods, and then as soon as you get to the woods of the third draft, it's surprise, this is what this film is really about, because it's your unconscious is tricking you into dealing with something that consciously you are resisting dealing with.
Yeah.
That's usually what art is doing. And so being really, really open to the script evolving and changing, and not being scared just to delete or just open a new document and let it become the thing that it's going to become, because you're evolving as an artist, as the script is, and you want it to be as amazing as your development is, not just clutching to the past. Mm-hmm. Even when it comes to big studio industry films like Moana, which I love that film, the first draft, The Rock's character, do you guys know, what's his name? What's his name? He's the demigod, right? He's ooh, it's such a pleasure to meet me. In the original first draft, he was the main character. That's how much a film, even within that universe, with that many writers and that many producers doing researching, that's how much these things change. And so just your first draft really should just be the quickest vomit you can of the essence of the material. And you should not worry about whether it's good or whether it works, because you are going to rewrite every single page. And I just hate to see emerging writers wasting time rewriting the first 10 pages to try to get it right. And I'm you can't get it right because right is not defined in your brain yet. You don't know what the piece really is. It's kind of like telling Excel, looking at an Excel document and saying, organize this according to what's good. And Excel's gonna be what the fuck does that mean? Column A, B, C, or D, alphabetically or numerically. If you cannot define what is good and effective, which you won't until about your third draft, you can't do that heavy rewriting.
I also think it changes a lot, because when you're really early in a screenplay, most of the time you won't have a team yet. It's just you. It's just you completely alone. And then when you get much later, surrounding yourself with people that you really trust and that really understand the core of the story will open it up to things that you never even expected. And having producers that are really good at the creative side of things, of rather than telling you what it is, but asking you questions and making you think like, oh, what am I talking about here? What would these characters say? Like, yeah, what is the point of this? Because sometimes you just, you get stuck like, all right, this is what it was, so this is what it's going to be. But then when you bring on really good collaborators, that's when it gets like exciting and challenging in a good way, because the more people in your army that are all on the same page of, we just want to all tell the best story possible and hold on to the core of what your film is, let's all make it better together, that your screenplay will just keep evolving.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point though, because is to make sure the people that you are listening to or collaborating with are all on board for you telling your story, what you want to say. Because sometimes you can bring people in, or I see this with teachers all the time, where it's like in a class, they'll like give an answer to a writer how they would fix a scene that's not working. And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, if I don't know what the intention of the author is, I can't give notes, and so always making sure if it's your design team, if it's a director, or if it's, a workshop with people, or if it's a writing mentor, if it's a manager, that they should be serving, like, what do you want this piece to do? Like, how do you want your audience to feel at this moment? Like, what is the thematic impact you want this to have? And then when that artist answers back, they should be able to be like, okay, to do that, this is the direction you would go in, or this is going to be more effective. But if you ever hear anyone giving you notes without that person understanding what your intention in that script or in that moment is, just know that the notes they're giving you are probably useless. And you should only work with people who are there not for their own ego, but to help yours. Because I see that struggle sometimes with early directors who get a really great experienced DP, right? And then suddenly the DP starts trying to like make it their movie instead of helping serve the, and so just making sure it is better to be with smart collaborators who believe in what you want to do than people who have tons and tons of credits, but aren't actually listening to what you want to accomplish, because it doesn't matter how many credits they have. If the end product is not you and your art and what you want to say, then like, that to me would be, even if it's a higher quality product, I think it is more of a failure if it is not authentically your voice, the themes you want to communicate, like how your voice is different than anyone else's voice in this industry, because that's the thing that eventually people are going to start paying you for, is that, everyone knows that indie film quality-wise is, you're not going to have the same budget as Marvel, but if there is a uniqueness of the voice, if there is an essence and a tone and an opinion in that voice that they have never seen before, they won't care if the shots are a little wobbly, or if, the acting on some of the smaller parts are here or there. They're just going to be like, that's a diamond in the rough. That's good DNA. And if we put a little bit of support and money behind this artist, like, we're very excited about what she can do. And that's going to get you further in the industry than having the most polished, beautiful, perfect piece, but it's not expressing the complete weird uniqueness of your voice. And I do think that your piece does that really well. I was like, this is a distinct voice. I was like, there are people who are going to be like, either I love this or I hate this. And I think that is the epitome of good art, is you're either like, I love this or I hate this, and nothing in between.
I had so many people that worked on this film that I just loved and wanted to work on every single film with. My cinematographer, two things I want to say. My cinematographer, when I met him, we clicked immediately, because he was talking about films and brainstorming with me, but not making it into a film that I didn't view it as. And he didn't have as much experience as somebody else that was also interested in making the film, but was kind of like steamrolling what I was saying, but had been to Sundance a billion times. And I was like, I went with my gut and I went with the other guy, and our collaboration was incredible. Every single shot we wrote down, like, why this shot? Like, what are we trying to say with this shot? So that if a problem happened on set, we could redo things, but know, like, all right, here's the point of this. Let's just figure out a new solution. And then my editor, we had a discussion in the edit. He said, okay, we're pushing this film really hard a certain way. Let's commit to that. He goes, just know people are going to either love it or hate it, and we're not like settling for a middle of the crowd kind of trying to please everyone approach to this film. And I was like, that's exactly what I want to do. Because I have had really interesting responses to the film. I tried to make a really honest piece about somebody who struggles with caregiving and wants to run away from it and is in deep denial and takes it out on people she loves. And a lot of people, audience members, didn't understand that, but a lot really did. So it's been interesting, and I'm so happy you said that, because it's a huge thing. Like, why try and please everyone in sacrificing how you view the world and how you want to say things? Like, be bold about it and make a choice that's a little scary and maybe challenging.
Or if you're someone who struggles to do things for yourself, but you're better at serving other people, then I would say, if you try to please everyone, you will satisfy no one.
Yeah.
And so if you identify, like, who are the people that you want to, who are the disturbed people that you want to calm, and who are the calm people that you want to disturb, and if you can write it for them and everyone else can just F off and go watch a different film.
I love that.
Right? Just like, I'm always doing that, because like I write really twisted thrillers that like people are just like, you're disgusting, what's wrong with you? And then people coming up and like, thank you, I'm not a monster. And I'm like, oh no, like, some of us just live in caves, some of us were just raised by Wolverines. And I like to write for all of those people and be like, I love you. Yes, I validate that. But it really is important to decide who your audience is. And this is why we see in a lot of big Hollywood films, like, you'll be like, how do they have so much money and so much talent? And it kind of was like, meh. And it is because they are trying to please everyone. And it can still be fun and it can still be entertainment. But if you want to have a profound effect that changes someone's life, then you have to speak to the uniqueness of that person, that soul, that place of neglect, that fear of whatever. And so if you're like, I'm not even sure what I want to say or that I have anything important to say, or if you're struggling with that, at least be like, who are the people that you would like to calm, that are disturbed at this moment? Who are the people you would like to validate? What is the one truth about this world that you wish more people understood? And if you can just honor that, eventually if you do it enough, you're gonna find your voice and your platform. But for some people, I know it's easier to serve than it is to speak. But I'm so glad that you had that experience, because I realized that
So
very early in the film. Very early in the film, I was like, oh, I know. I was like, this person had a few conversations about some things, and I was like, good for you. Because I would much rather.
I stuck to my guns too. My producers at certain times were like, I don't know about this scene, and I'm like, no, it's very important. Me and the editor were like, no, it has to stay. And there were discussions. There were like little, challenges along the way that were good, because then it made me realize, like, oh no, this needs to be in the film for these reasons. And if I couldn't justify, I would have cut it.
And I think that's the important thing too, though, is like, if you are in a collaboration or if you are in a class and someone does challenge you on it, realize that that's an opportunity, because oftentimes you consciously will not understand what your artistry is taking care of until someone challenges you, and then you have to consciously figure out what your artistry was doing. And if you can figure it out, then you can defend it, and then you should. And if you can't, then that's probably a moment where you're like, you know what, actually, you're right. Like, maybe I should rewrite that little section. But I worked with some really contentious people, and I loved it, because since I write such weird, wonky stuff, I got used to very early in my career people being like, why this, why this, why this, why this? And it forced me to consciously understand what my unconscious had done. And that also helps you to develop craft so that you know how to do it later. So having a bunch of people around you to question you in a loving, supportive way, not in a tear you down way, do not work with those people, pick them out. It is one of the most beneficial things, not only for the project, but for your next like 3 or 4 projects, because I'm sure that your craft after this piece just jumped forward like 8 years worth of work in like 2 years.
I keep saying the best decision I made was to direct the film, because now that's all I want to do. So yeah, my next film, I learned so much. I don't even know. I think it's just communication is the main thing, and and understanding how to talk about all of the choices I'm making in this script. Like the first thing I'm thinking of, my next script, my next one's called Ultra, and it's about a woman who runs a 135-mile race across the desert and has to come face to face with a traumatic memory from her past while she's running. And this three-legged rabbit keeps appearing throughout the race that she is beginning to hallucinate as her body and her mind break down. And my producers are like, okay, why this rabbit? But
Why don't that?
so I was, it's been a whole conversation, but they're thinking about, money, how do we, it's 3 legs, we're gonna have to put like a boot on it, if we can't find a 3-legged rabbit, but it's hugely
Just throw me a
important.
couple $100, I'll give you the link.
Yeah, I was like, we'll get some PAs.
We used to slaughter rabbits. We grew up pretty country, so I'm like, all right, I get you a 3-legged rabbit real quick.
I gotta connect. But yeah, it's been good because I think I work really instinctually. Like I'll just write things and not know why I'm writing them, and then I'll find out much later. And very early on, I had to have these conversations and justifying, like, okay, why? Because the budget for my next film is much bigger, so the stakes are much higher. Thank you. So the stakes are higher, and it's all amazing. But if I didn't, learn so much from my first one, I wouldn't be able to articulate what I'm doing in the next one.
Right, which is why I think it's really good to think about your first couple of films as just like grad school, right? You're just like, this is me learning, and just think about like you in 30 years. Like in 30 years, you're gonna look back at this first film and be like, oh my god, look how cute I was.
I tried so hard.
Yeah, but like it's true for anything. Like I look back on my first play. Oh my god, you guys, the first full-length play I ever put up in New York City. First of all, I'm just like, I would like to apologize to anyone who might have had to sit through that. I am sorry, but it's because sitting there and watching it, and I remember being like, opening night, I was like, I now know everything that's wrong with this, and there's nothing I can do about it. And sitting in the shame, I was just like, and I was like, it could either make me never write a script again, but no, it was like, I was sitting there, I was like, great, I'm gonna learn from this, and that throwing yourself into the fire and feeling the ache of just wanting to apologize and reimburse every person in the audience was what made me to make sure that like that next script there was no 20-minute monologues that go nowhere to represent how like aimless it feels to be 24. So you just know like you're never, if you write anything and 2 years later you look back and it's like that's really good, you have not grown.
Yeah, it's not.
You should look back on what you wrote 2 years ago and go, oh, thank God I'm a better writer now, and that is the sign of like a really great artist who's growing and learning, is this just constant embarrassment about what you've done in the past.
I sat, so when my film was playing the festival circuit, I sat in the theater every single time it played because I'm a paranoid person and I wanted to make sure that nothing happened with the projection, that the sound was good, because I would rather know it screened well and the audience had the best possible version of the film than not. So I'd sit there and just stare at the floor and hope no one looked at me because I'm also acting in the film. I'm like, okay, I'm not here. And then after like 10 times of dealing with that, I turned to my boyfriend and I was like, never, ever, if I ever write a meet cute in a film again, don't let it happen. Like if I share a script with you, like there's moments in my film that I immediately am like, oh God, I would have changed that. And it's so funny because looking back on it too, my instincts as a director, I was a new director, so my instincts were so, there were times now when I look at the film that I know exactly what I would do, but in the moment of like writing, directing, producing, acting, I knew something was weird in certain scenes and I was like, oh, what can I do to fix it? And I couldn't figure it out, and now my experience of going back, I'm like, I know exactly what I would do now. So it's funny, but yeah, it's never gonna be perfect, and it's, you gotta just keep doing.
Well, because now you're going to do something that's more ambitious, like, and you're always going to get to the next level. And so, like, then you're going to be watching, your rabbit film now, and there's going to be a moment where you're like, oh my god, right? And you're just going to keep growing and growing because you see great filmmakers who do it. You see, if I see a filmmaker and they just stay in like that one thing they know how to do, like compared to like I love watching Darren Aronofsky go into Noah. Right? I was like, you try. That's right. You aim, you give up, and here's the thing, if he hadn't have done Noah, like we would not have had Mother. And I think that was like, I love, watching not a perfect film, but I was like, thank you for making that film and giving me that experience. He could not have done that if he had not done No, and he could not have done No if he hadn't done the previous film and the previous film and the previous film. So it's just this idea that rather than aiming for perfection, right, or a validation from the industry, of just if you focus more on growth and development of the storytelling skills and building community with finding more and more people who are capable of bringing your crazy visions to life, like, you will have a much easier road. Like, I mean, it's still going to be painful, but you're going to suffer a lot less. Like, and that's the most that I can offer anyone, is it's going to be painful no matter what, but you don't have to suffer as much because of the way that you approach. Well, I don't suffer at all from the pain. I'll be like, this hurts, but pain means I'm growing, and pain means I'm learning, and so it's not a negative experience. It's like going to the gym and working yourself to the bone. It hurts, but you're like, you're not suffering. You're just in pain. Pain is not necessarily that bad of a thing. It is the story we tell ourselves about our pain that stops us from doing the things that we want to do. And especially in an industry where it is such an uphill battle, right? But I want to talk to you later afterwards about the white rabbit, the baby of the rabbit. So like that symbolically, I'm just like, I got you on that one. So for a sort of final question before, I want to be able to open up, because we have a lovely attentive audience, which makes me very happy. For the piece that you're currently working on, is there anything that you would like to share with us that, almost as like, if 22-year-old you were sitting right there, like, what would be the biggest thing that you think would be most helpful to remember or remind yourself on a daily basis as a young emerging filmmaker?
Oh man, that anything's possible. I never thought I would be making films. I really never did. So I think it's just continually believing that I'm capable. Because I think it did take a horrible, sad experience in my life for me to feel brave. And I felt not capable for a really long time. So I think it would be that. Yeah, that I do have things to say, and my voice is valid.
And it doesn't have to be perfect.
I think I was terrified every single day I was directing that first film, but it was the best experience of my life, and I think it was just surrounding myself with people I trusted. But one big moment, I don't know that I can. I think I was just nonstop battling imposter syndrome of like, I'm a 27-year-old person who's directing someone who's decades more experience and worked with unbelievable directors. Why am I telling him anything? So I think it would be that relationship between me and Robert Vaughn, who played my dad, where I was just like the whole time. But I got so close to him in just having like really honest conversations and bonding with him. But I don't think there was any one moment. I think it's just thinking about the whole experience of making that first film was kind of like, I've never directed anything, what am I doing? I'm just doing it, I don't know, I'm just gonna do it because I want to, and I feel like I can and should.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think anyone who tells you that they don't have imposter syndrome, and if you're like, oh, they feel so confident, cool, I can guarantee you, it's not true. That is a front. I know, because those are the people who come see me in private and tell me don't tell anyone that I work with you. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. I can be your back, your side chick. That's fine. And I have lovely writers who are more open, who want to help, shift the way that the industry is a little bit in this huge ego-driven, everyone pretending that everything's okay when it's really not. But I mean, I had a similar experience where the most accomplished writer I have is a producer on 14 different shows, has won Emmys, and I'm sitting here and I'm just like, oh shit. At first when this person came to me, I was like, wow, this person's been working in the industry twice as long as almost I've been alive practically. And, it was just this thing really of me realizing that, they're coming to me for a reason, and they said yes to this for a reason, and then it doesn't matter how experienced you are, like, you always need someone from an outside point of view to direct you. It's like, we're always lost in the woods. When you're writing, when you're producing and directing, you're always lost in the woods, and you need that person, like, in the chopper that has the aerial view being like, nope, go left, I know it seems wrong, but go left. Or like, I sometimes say like a Sherpa, where it's like, I'm like your Sherpa up Mount Everest, where it's just like, I'm not at the top screaming, get up here. It's like, I'm just sitting there and I'm like, okay, no, don't put your hand there, put your hand here. And that for a director, when you're working with your actors, it's a similar thing. You're not telling them how to act, you're not teaching them, you're not saying, I know more than you. You're simply saying, I can see things from outside of this, and if you trust me, like, we're gonna create something beautiful. And it doesn't matter if it's your first script or your 80th, like, that, the strength of that relationship and the trust of that relationship is what will get everyone to a product that is awesome.
I don't even remember how many drafts. It was a couple of years of writing, because it took me, I was also raising funds while, writing the script. Once I decided to commit to doing it, dozens of fully new drafts. I remember early on the film kept inching closer and closer to my actual life. It started off really distant. My first draft was a road trip movie with a woman and her much older father bringing him to a high school reunion. And then that went away and it became a film about an estranged father and daughter, but the core was always there. The core of the film was always a daughter resisting her father, but trying to figure out, who is this man before he passes away? Will I ever really know who he is? And it just kept changing, and I kept questioning, trying to figure out, right, I know this relationship, but what's the stuff around it? And then it became about the caregiver, resistant caregiver element to it. But it changed so much. There are characters that don't exist anymore. There are characters I added and put in. So many different versions. And and the process of how do I do it? Do I start from the beginning and then go all the way through? I think it just depends of what I'm realizing as I'm going. Like, all right, well, am I not doing this road trip movie anymore? Well, now it's a completely new thing. And then I'll tinker in that. But I really enjoy, every time I'm writing, I will read the whole script and then think, and then just start writing. So it takes me a long time just to start writing most of the time, because I need to kind of have a warm up into my own film. So a lot of the time, I was talking before we started this huge discussion about I like to make playlists. So I'll make a playlist of music that I think fits the mood, and then I'll use that as my way in, and then I'll read the whole script, and then I'll start working and tinkering, because sometimes even if I know I want to work on one scene, I can't just jump into that one scene. Like, I have to warm myself up with the whole film. So it takes me a really long time, actually, every time I'm writing. I don't know, everyone is different, and I'm sure that is a much longer process than a lot of people, but that's my easiest way, because my brain has to, like, get in the world, and sometimes takes me a while. I was terrified. There are some things in the film that I thought were relationships with my family. I have half-siblings, and there's a half-sibling character in the film that there's some dialogue and lines said that reveal a lot of difficult family conflict. And there was a moment, and I just knew it was honest, and I knew that the character I wrote for myself, I wasn't trying to make myself look good. I was just trying to be honest about everything. And I didn't know how anyone in my family would react to anything. And it was really, really scary. But when the film screened in Connecticut, where I grew up, where my family lives. And my half brother came to see the film, and I didn't know he was going to be there. And we did a Q&A afterwards, and the person moderating said, "Any questions left?" And my half brother Steven said, "I have a question." And then there was a long pause, and I was like, "Oh no, what is it?" And he said, "I just want you to know that I feel Dad here in this room, and I love you and I'm proud of you." And I've never felt closer to him in my entire life, and we hugged and cried. But yeah, I was really worried about that, because with my mom, there's intense stuff in the film with the character that plays based on my mom, but I kept my mom, abreast of everything going on. But my half siblings had no idea, and it was really intense and difficult.
Because I feel.
But you should do it.
I think one thing just to jump off of that too, which I believe is one of the reasons why that probably happened in your piece, is the fact that there's no judgment. If you watch the film, you see that, and this is something that you should have for all of your characters, no matter what they do, is you should replace judgment with curiosity and treat every character, even if they're in a harder moment or if they are the antagonist. You have to find the part of you where you're like, I don't necessarily agree with what they're doing, but I understand if I was that person raised in that way and in that situation, why I might say or do those things. And if you do that, every time I've seen that happen in a piece, an artistic piece, the people who it's based off of are always they're okay. They're okay. It's only, I think, when I see that there's a judgment and saying you were wrong, or playing a victim of the self in the piece, that's when it's broken up. Families and people have been quite upset about it. Because that is very, very clear in the piece.
Yeah, I think it comes back to, do they understand the core of the story, and can they approach it in a way that supports it, and do I feel comfortable with them too? Because I think if I don't feel comfortable enough to safely have a conversation of questioning each other, then I don't want to work with that person. So I think it's a lot of those checkpoints, do they understand my story? Do they really care about it? Are they gonna care enough to make it better, to put in the work, to question what I'm doing, to add more, but to really listen? And anytime I met with someone, it's just recognizing in the moment, are they really listening to me, processing it, and giving me back something that's adding more to what I'm saying. So yeah, I think I just really went down that list of, are they a good person too? Can I tell that this is someone, because especially shooting a film, it's long hours. These people, for my first film, lived in my mom's house. Are they good people that I want to be in my childhood house with my family, interacting in this world of difficult stuff? So yeah, and they're lifelong friends, for sure.
I think collaboration is something that, right now I'm part of a 5, there's 5 of us producing this one piece. And I think when you're in that type of space, it's super important to not only have what is the shared unified vision, and make sure everyone is on board for that, and that everyone really, really understands it, where it came from, what the value of it is going to be. And then I think also just having contracts of communication. I don't think this is something that most people do, but just as someone from the sex positive community, contracts. Contracts make good neighbors. Contracts make good relationships. I see my friends in marriages, and they're like, he cheated on me, and I'm like, well, what's cheating? And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, it's cheating. One of my close friends, if her man looks at another woman, it's cheating. For me, I'm like, just don't fuck my sister. That's really my only boundary. I'm very confident in what I offer and what I don't. It's fine, And so when I'm working with my writers to develop writer partnership contracts, I'm always just setting those boundaries and knowing I told my production team, I'm like, these are the things I will be a point person on. These are the things I will not be a point person on. These are the things I'll be a secondary person on. If you email me, this is the time frame in which I will and can get back to you. If I am ever not capable of doing that, I understand that demotation is in order, and that if everyone can get on board about, and just don't trust that the way one film communicates as a team, like writer's room. Every single writer's room has its own rules, its own systems, its own attitudes, most of which is based off of whether or not the showrunner likes their spouse and wants to go home at night. But you have to realize that every single project you do, you want to create your own languaging. Thank you for the one person who got that joke. You want to create your own languaging and your own contract so that it's fine, so that I tell my writers, I'm just like, emails over 7 sentences long, I will not read. It's just not going to happen. I'm dyslexic, and it's just like, I will get overwhelmed and I will just delete it. Is that fair? If you don't like that, probably not the best version. But if you put it in your pages, I will read every single one of your pages. I will analyze the crap out of it, and we will talk about it when we meet. So it doesn't matter if you're doing, content creation, or you're doing a novel and you have an editor, or you're doing a piece. Just take the reins and be like, let's all have an honest discussion about what we are here to do, what we get people excited emotionally excited about the vision. Right? And then let's be like, let's create languaging and contracts so that we can work as effectively as possible and keep each other in check. And I tell my writers, I'm like, you never have to do something, you choose to do something, right? And I even tell them, I'm like, if you overhear me saying, I have to go do this, check me and say, choose. And giving them permission to check me as much as I would check them, so that even though I am the captain of the ship, we are all in partnership together, so that I'm not ever teaching down to them. And so if you are in a situation like that, I just think it's really fun. And you can make little graphs, and you can create your own little lingo, like PAs, do with the languaging and stuff, and it's becomes your own secret code. And now it's you're 15 starting a club rather than adults with the fraud police on your back. But it really is just communication, and always get a contract, always get it right.
All connected. It's just choosing what to turn on or off. The producer brain, I don't want to think about budget at certain
That's what I mean, because when I'm writing, I'm introspective. I'm just but when I'm producing, it's another part of the brain.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, is it working the same?
For this film, I think the producer brain was pretty on for it, because I knew I wanted to shoot it. I knew I wouldn't be capable of raising a ton of money to do it, because I was a first-time director for it. So I wrote it knowing what locations I could get for free. I did set a certain framework. Once I got later on and did decide to direct it, and committed to definitely doing it, because those early drafts that I was saying before about the road trip and stuff, I just had to get that out of my system, so there was no producer hat on at all. So that was never an overlap in me thinking. I was really free early on in the process, because I didn't think I was ever going to actually make the film. I was just writing, because I've always been a writer. So those hats definitely did come on later, and I was thinking about budget. I wrote it for my mom's house. I knew I could shoot there for free. I did take certain risks with writing hospital sequences, but I worked magic and got those for free. So I think they're all connected. It's just a free flow of not thinking about certain things. But for the next film, I'm not worried. I'm involving the team in different ways than the first film. So I think when I'm just writing, I try to be as free as I can, because I am a really instinctual writer and I don't want to worry about budget and stuff. But yeah, this is all a long-winded way of saying, as I go back in, I think those light up more.
And just on a basic science level, it's it really depends on what your goal is.
Yeah.
And you're consciously setting goals, because there's different systems in the brain that work and cancel out other systems. So if you're not consciously setting a goal, it'll be unconsciously set for you, and you might be activating a system that is not actually effective for the cognitive function that you need. And so by identifying what your goal is in that moment, you will activate creativity versus analysis versus judgment. All of those systems repress the other ones. When you're left side of the brain, it represses your right side of the brain, which means you're incapable of taking in anything new. So if you're in the left side of the brain and you need to create something new, you've got a problem, and that's when you come up with things that are cliche or that you've already seen before. Right? So there's all these the hemispheres and the different systems in the brain work in this weird little metropolitan future soupy-sorpy land. And quickest answer, aside from saying, take my class, is that if you consciously set a very clear goal of exactly what purpose you are serving with the work you are doing in the next hour, you are more likely to activate the parts of your brain that are going to be effective than if you leave it up to chance. And it sounds like that when you're listening to all your music and getting into your script, that's really what you're doing, is you're telling all of the systems in your brain that are going to be judgmental and analytical to shut the hell up, and all of the creative demons that live hidden in your soul are getting called out to dance in a nice Bacchus row, and that's the way that you do that. But it really does come down to identifying consciously for yourself what is the thing that we are doing so that you can activate the right aspects of the brain.
Yeah, I started to build audience once I realized the caregiving aspect to the story. So I would reach out to organizations that were specifically geared towards young caregivers, stroke associations, people that were in the caregiving community really were interested in the film and rallied behind it. And I did several screenings just at rehabilitation facilities. I did a screening at UNC that was at a caregiving conference. And those were my favorite experiences because the conversations afterwards about caregiving were really interesting. And we had hour-long discussions, and we were getting kicked out of places. But it was challenging for me because I was doing so much. I couldn't really focus intensely on building audience, but I did do a crowdfunding campaign for a very small portion of the funds for the film, which helped to make some people aware. And then I just, social media, finding these organizations, reaching out to people, any little way, Robert Vaughn fans, any little niche community that might be interested in the film, I tried to find a way in with them. But it's tough because there was so much to do and I was doing a lot, but I did try to do it as early as I could.
If people want to follow you and find out, where should they go to first of all see your film, and where should they go to get updates on you and the work that you're doing?
My film is on Amazon Prime, Gold Star, look for it there. My website, you can go to and sign up for my email list, and I will keep you posted on the next film. Or if you're more into social media, it's just my name, Twitter, Instagram, at Victoria Negri. So I'm on all of these things and very active.
And thank you to ISA. They have awesome opportunities there. And once again, you can find more about me at meditatewriting.org. The only social media that I'm active on, please don't try to find me on any other because it's some weird intern from 3 years ago, is Instagram at meditative_writing, where there is daily updates of little nuggets of wisdom. It's all words, no images. Sorry, I go against the system. And thank you so much for the assemblage, for their awesome, beautiful space. And thank you mostly to you guys for donating your time and your presence and your attention, because we need more people creating great work to give this one here a run for her money next time around. So round of applause for everyone.